Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And we're joined by a special friend of the show and sponsor, Hunter Harrelson of Beach Ball Properties. Hunter is one of my favorite Alabama fans, and he's here to talk about what was just an amazing win by Alabama over Georgia and to gloat a little bit, and I'm going to give him this platform to do it. So, Hunter, why don't you tell us first, before we get into that game, what you thought about the season going into it?
So the best way I can describe it, Daniel, is the old, Slim Shady, which with a real Slim Shady, please stand up. You've got an Alabama team that, naturally dominates towards the beginning of the season. We go in and play an Ole Miss team that I was obviously nervous about from the season before. Lane Kiffin did all his analytics, and we ended up, dominating them. They got a garbage touchdown at the end, and we're flying on cloud nine. And then the A&M game happens. And it was actually during my birthday party weekend, which made it even more hurtful that I'm sitting there watching it with all my friends on, basically my birthday. But, good Alabama fans were always thinking two steps ahead. In the fourth quarter, I kind of looked at everybody and said, well, with them having two losses, this is actually our mulligan game. This is our game that we can kind of use to hopefully learn from. And then you come back and you dominate state at, away. So I'm like, okay, we're back. And we played Tennessee, and we covered the spread, and Tennessee's got a good offense this year, so I didn't feel too bad about it. Then the LSU game happened, and they had 5 out of 6 defensive backs were out, Singletary Jr.'s out. It's like, oh, we're just gonna just bomb all over them, and to win 20-14 like we did with them having the ball and making a stand was just nerve-wracking. It's like it felt like an old LSU game. We got a breather with Mercer, and then Arkansas, they came to fight, and then we got to the Iron Bowl, Daniel. Got to the Iron Bowl, and I can tell you, I was fit to be tied. I just could not believe it's that there's got to be 100 horseshoes buried under that stadium. There's some voodoo dolls with Bear Bryant with pins in the head. That's all I can figure, because I don't even know the exact record, but I'm pretty sure we have a losing record in Jordan-Hare. It's just like,
I know at one point, I think it was until y'all never won a game in Jordan-Hare until 2009, the first year that Saban won the national championship. And the joke amongst all of us Auburn fans is that in 3 centuries, Alabama had never beaten Auburn in Jordan-Hare. And, of course, just because Hunter and I like to mess with each other a little bit, I'm wearing my Morgan Wallen Tennessee shirt, which, by the way, Hunter, I'm glad I purchased this when I went to that Morgan Wallen concert, because if I ever go to a game in Neyland Stadium, this is the way I'm not going to get hit with a golf ball. I'm going to wear this.
There you go. Well, you'll like my shirt. If you remember back when Jalen and Tua were at the beginning of the season, this is Nick Saban saying, I'm not going to do it, so quit asking. This is my wife's favorite shirt, because I always tell her, quit asking me to do it, because I'm not going to do it. But anyway, so the Iron Bowl happens. I'm going into the fourth quarter. Even at halftime, I'm like thinking, okay, we'll kind of figure it out. We'll get going, kind of like we seem to be doing, and nothing. And, you and I were talking about before the break, if Tank Bigsby doesn't go out of bounds, Alabama's, got less time on the clock to make it happen. So, obviously, we were excited to tie the game up. Felt good about that. The new overtime format is it's different. The thought process on it is hopefully somebody scores early on and it doesn't carry on into these 7, like the A&M LSU game. But if you got a receiver like a Mechie or Jameson or even like we had with Smith last year, that can do an easy cut in and cut back out, and you got a quarterback like Bryce that can just laser it in on a rope. It's easy to get those little short plays like that. But anyway, the real talk is the Georgia game, right? So I happened to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was one of my good buddies' weddings. We went to this bar.
Interesting place to be last weekend.
Do what?
So Cincinnati was an interesting place to be last weekend.
Yes, it was very interesting. So the place we're at is called the Holy Grail, and it's literally, I wouldn't even call it across the street. Like, you can stumble out the door and walk right into Red Stadium. It's just a perfect venue for all things sports down there. Tons of bars. You're walking distance to the Bengal Stadium. It was a real neat deal. So it was interesting. They had the TV split, half the TVs were on the Cincinnati game, naturally, and a lot of Cincinnati fans in there, and half TVs were on the Bama game. Now, I will say we got there a little early and caught the end of the Baylor game, and those Cincinnati fans were very excited about Baylor making that goal line stand. So anyway, it was really weird, though, because they had all the TVs, or all the sound was piping out the Cincinnati game. So we're watching the Bama game, and I would probably say it was only probably 2-1 because we kind of had all that wedding crowd was in there cheering for Bama. But anyway, we talked about LSU. We talked about what Auburn did to stop Alabama. All the talk was this is the best Georgia defense ever. It's like the 2011 Bama defense. I think, Daniel, Georgia scored about what I thought they would score. The 24-31 is kind of what I figured. 6-8 weeks prior in the season, I would have thought, hey, Bama's going to score 40 plus. That's the game we want. Georgia didn't want a shootout, especially with Stetson Bennett. But I was also prepared to lose. And when we went down 10-0, I'm sitting there having my drinks. I'm like, yep, this is what's going to happen. At least we made it to the SEC championship game. And then bam, the Jameson Williams, blown coverage. I think they said, I read on Twitter today, he hit 22.4 miles per hour on that run, fastest wide receiver. And to think that guy was 4th, 5th on the lineup at Ohio State, and now projections are showing he might be the first wide receiver out of all 4 of those guys off the board.
Really? They got him ahead of Olave and Wilson now?
Yeah, that's what I saw in a couple of mock drafts. They've got him ahead right now just because, simple thing like a couple of years ago, he's a bad name to bring up, but like Henry Ruggs. Ruggs went sooner than probably the better receiver because of speed. Speed kills. I mean, that's Nick Saban. I think his kind of recruiting philosophy is I got to get at least one burner on the team because you want to have that. But anyhow, the game kind of flipped on its momentum there. We started to believe, they tied it back up 17-17. I was like, well, we're in the game. And then bam, quick touchdown, 2-minute drive or 2-minute drill, and then score the touchdown at the half. And then Georgia now all of a sudden is down 14 points. And that is not a position their offense is built for. I was talking to somebody else. The game felt to me like the 2016 Clemson Bama game. That 2016 defense with Reuben Foster and Jonathan Allen and who else? I mean, there was just tons of first rounders on that defense, and Deshaun Watson just ripped them apart. So in college, a good quarterback can outplay, a great defense. And, I think some of it was propped up. Some of the games Georgia played, just they caught teams at the right time, but did not expect us to go in there and just dominate and flip to be the number 1 team in the playoffs at all. But I feel good. I'm glad, we basically got the first round bye against Cincy. We wait and see who the winner of Georgia Michigan is.
Well, Hunter, let me ask you this: as an Alabama fan, everybody was trying to give Bryce Young his Heisman moment for that touchdown that he had against Auburn to tie it up. In my mind, of course, there's a lot of things I see wrong with what happened at the end of that Iron Bowl, but I look more at the Heisman moment for Bryce Young being when he recovered that fumble against Georgia. That was a huge play. I mean, people are going to forget. People are going to look at the final score. They beat Georgia 41-24. They really dominated the last 2.5 quarters. But if Georgia had recovered that fumble, I think the game was tied at that point, wasn't it? And that was the touchdown at the end of the first half?
Yes, it was right down at the end of the first half. It was tie game. They could have gotten the ball back, ran out the clock, and went in with a tie. We got the ball coming out of the half, which still would have been a confidence booster, but going up those 2 touchdowns.
Huge momentum play right there. Because, I mean, 3 Georgia guys had a better chance getting that ball than Bryce Young did. He fought on the ground to get it. And I gained a lot more respect for the guy on that play, even more so than anything I'd seen him do beforehand, because you got to think that that's a scary thing to do, to go against those Georgia guys to get that ball off the ground.
Yeah, and what's worse about that play, I don't know if you remember, that's the play Mechie tore his ACL on. He was 5 yards.
On the side of the field, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he was making a cut to block or something, and you could just see the way he pulled that leg up. It was just a non-contact injury. But Daniel, some scuttlebutt I've been hearing from inside the locker room was that they were telling Bryce early on, do not run, do not leave the pocket, go down, throw the ball away, because they're not really confident in the backups. So I think the thought was keep him safe. But then I think as you got towards the end of the season, like in that Auburn game and even in the Georgia game, it's like, hey, all bets are off now. You got to run, you got to make it. If you get hurt, you get hurt, but we got to have, best players making the plays. So I think next year it'll be even more intriguing with Ty Simpson coming in as a 5-star, coach's son at UT Martin, Elite 11 quarterback. If they have confidence in him, you might see Alabama next year, run Bryce a little bit more, option type stuff. And that's something too. I don't know if you noticed in the Georgia game, Bama got away from the RPOs and the play action. It was more like, let's get Bryce back. Let's give the line, the best they can. And, those guys bucked up. Like I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect a 3-star to come in and play center and hold down Jordan Davis for the most part. I mean, that was insane. And I've seen some clips too. I don't know if you've noticed or if saw any of them where him, he's supposed to be this elite 6'6", 340 dominating guy. And on pass plays, I wouldn't even call it a mush rush. It was almost like he just kind of stood up and just waddled into the offensive line. Like that doesn't look good for your highlights in the NFL. And that'll go back to too, when you talk about the Auburn game, the Arkansas game, the LSU game, Bama fans, we beat this like a drum. But everybody brings us their best game. We're everybody's national championship Super Bowl. And if you're an elite prospect or a possible NFL prospect, the first game film they're going to turn on is going to be the Bama game. So your goal is to show up and show out. So, I kind of, as a Bama fan, we hate to see that, but at the same time, I guess it gives us a lot more respect, for what we're able to accomplish, getting everybody's best shot.
Let me ask you this, Joe. I wanted you to pitch in on this one. Do you think that maybe – I was blown away that you get to the end of that Georgia game and that vaunted defensive front got 0 sacks against Alabama while Auburn had 7. Do you think that it might be more of a scheme thing that Auburn sends guys on the outside, LSU does more DN rushes, but Georgia tries to do the more up-the-middle rush with their big defensive tackles? Let's get you this first, Joe. Do you think that makes a difference?
It's hard to say. I'm still trying to kind of digest everything and get a read on what transpired on Saturday, because here's the thing. What transpired completely rewrote the narrative of the entire 2021 college football season. Like it was all about Georgia, and suddenly it's not. And maybe Georgia still wins the national championship, but the performance we saw from Alabama, it almost makes you kind of look back at their schedule and you're like, was the SEC West stronger than we thought? Because all of those teams gave them a really good game. Did Georgia just not play anybody? It's just hard to say. Suddenly a defense in Georgia that looked historically good this time a week ago suddenly has flaws. I can't get a good read on exactly the reason.
What do you think, Hunter? Do you think that maybe it's more of a scheme-based thing that made a difference with that offensive line for Alabama and then not giving up any sacks after giving up 7 the week before?
I would say a little bit scheme. I think Kirby Smart and even Will Muschamp to a degree were probably very overconfident in their 4-man rush because they were getting the quarterbacks all season long with 4. And then, of course, you flipped on the game film and you're seeing people get to Bama. And they tried some blitzes. There were some like I think one of the big bombs, I think the Jameson was there was 6-7 guys coming and we just held it down. Brian Robinson was able to step up, picked up the linebacker, and even bounced over and assisted with a tackle. So, and some of it, I just think, like, I know this, like, it's weird. Like, the way you feel, even as a fan going into a game, like go by the LSU game, like when I found out all the DBs were out and everything, I was like, oh, we're just going to go in and crush them. Like, we're just going to show up with the A on our jersey, and just kill it. And I think that gets into the players' heads where the Ole Miss game and the Georgia game, like that was all we thought about. Like there was motivation, there was reason to go and win, which goes back to, I think a lot of it is, this is a very youthful team. The best offensive player probably in the country is probably going to Heisman's Bryce as a sophomore. And then you just had Will Anderson win the defense player of the year. So they're all coming back. The only real first rounders we're going to lose is Evan Neal probably. And then Jameis is probably going to go. Mechie's going to be iffy now with the knee injury. I figure he probably goes in and goes. He figures there's enough on film. Don't want to risk my knee again. We've got some stacked wide receivers from this year and next year coming in. But as far as scheme, I think it was arrogance on Georgia's part. And by the time they tried to dial it up, it was too late. And the guys got confidence and the momentum has shifted in Alabama's direction. I'm going to be intrigued to see how Georgia performs against Michigan now. 3-4 weeks ago, I'd say, oh, they'll shut them down. But now you got Michigan scoring back-to-back 40-plus games, especially against an Iowa team that they're known for defense. They're known for winning 13-10. So if Michigan was, racking up points on them, how's that game going to look?
Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing. I definitely wouldn't have given Michigan any chance in that game if I had known it was going to be a couple weeks ago. But, the way they looked against Ohio State and the way they followed it up against Iowa with scoring like 4 touchdowns in the last 2 quarters, because they had them. The game was pretty well in control, but they weren't putting up a whole lot. I know because I had the under bet on that, and I was really feeling good about it the entire game. And Michigan just lit them up at the very end of it. And I'm just really impressed with them right now. And I got to say, I'm leaning towards taking Michigan on the money line right now in that game. I don't know. I know I might be a little bit of a victim of the moment, but it just looks like they're such a more complete team than Georgia, and they don't have the quarterback issues that Georgia has right now.
No, and something else that I'll put on Michigan.
They might have their running backs too. Maybe
they do. Right now they look like the more talented team. But something I do want to point out about the Michigan-Ohio State game. If you think about it, Ohio State recruits like an SEC team. They pull kids out of California. They get kids out of Florida. They get kids out of Georgia and Texas, right? When I saw that it was going to be freezing cold and snowing, where Michigan recruits Midwestern guys, I said, there's going to be some cold guys on the Ohio State team that maybe not going to get, they're going to get hit a certain way. And they did look almost shell-shocked in that game. So I'm not saying go back and flip that game and it's in Florida, Ohio State, beats them or whatever. But I think the weather played a huge factor in that, helping Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a pretty solid point. I didn't think about that. But, yeah, that was an absolute blizzard. And you would think that the real Midwesterners, that would favor them in a game like that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
All right, Hunter, let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier that they were motivated against Georgia and Ole Miss because they heard how good they are. Do you think that after putting out their best performance of the season, now they're playing Cincinnati, where everyone and their mom's like, Cincinnati has 0 chance in this game, can't believe they got in the playoffs? Do you think that Alabama has a bit of a letdown in this one, or do you think that they're going to go out there and dominate? Because it's been a Jekyll and Hyde team all season. I can see it going either way.
You've got a great point. I've rolled it around a whole bunch. So obviously the loss of Mechie hurts, but Cincinnati's strength is their cornerbacks. They've got a first-round cornerback in. I can't think of his name. Do you know what his nickname is? He goes by something. Yeah, they've got a first-round cornerback, and the other guy's pretty good too. But apparently their run defense is pretty bad. Now then you got to flip it. We only have 2 scholarship running backs. One of them has a hurt hamstring and gutted it out against Georgia. So, if we've got a stable of backs, I think we just go in there and we just ground and pound, and, we run a more RPO game. So now if the running backs are healthy, I think that's the game plan. If they're not healthy, Alabama's got to play a mix. I agree. We're 13.5, 14-point favorites. Everybody's saying, oh, this is Cincinnati. They're nobodies. I hope it doesn't get in the team's head. I hope Saban can motivate them and them get up and know, this is the playoff. And at least the sophomores on the team and the juniors played in the playoff last year. So, and Cincinnati's never been in this position either. So, you got a flip side to them. Like, how are they going to live up to the moment? And I would say Cincinnati's strong thing is Jerome Ford, an Alabama transfer, by the way, who is their running back. But Alabama's got one of the best run defense in the country. A lot of people, I'd point out to some people that Georgia and Alabama going into the SEC championship, the difference in run stopping defense was only 20 yards. Alabama had allowed 20 more yards rushing than Georgia off of something like 26 more carries. Now, they had us on pass defense. We had given up like 700 more yards of pass. So that was kind of, bring some of that out. But I think the run defense, and we did pretty good against Georgia on run defense. So if we can, hem up Jerome Ford, I think we sit pretty on that game.
All right, well, let me ask you this, Hunter, and Joe, I want you to pitch in on this one as well. Worst coaching job, Kirby Smart by not ever putting JT Daniels in, especially after that first interception, or Brian Harsin by A, not coaching Tank to go down, and B, not in the first overtime going for 2, especially when you obviously had the best 2-point conversion play ever, which he did the next overtime to get the 2-point conversion. I'm going to let you go first, Hunter.
So I'm going to probably go with Harsin on this one because if you're Kirby, everybody looks back at that national championship game when Saban pulled Jalen Hurts and threw Tua in, and all of a sudden now that seems like that could be the story to do. There's got to be something about JT Daniels. The fact that he's come back healthy, but they've run with Bennett still. Something's going on in the locker room or something on the practice field is just not impressing Kirby. And sometimes, the old saying is you got to ride the horse that got you there. So, I'm not going to knock Kirby for trying to make a move or trying to do anything. He probably still felt confident. The Tank Bigsby thing, I don't know how much you can put that on Harsin. Some of that, he's trying to gut it out to get extra yards. I mean, if he cuts up field and gets 3 more yards, the ball game's over. Some of that was Alabama, pressing to the outside. So, but I agree with you. Like, he did have a good 2-point conversion play. If you know that you're about to roll to 2-point conversions anyway,
do it.
Go ahead and do it, which is kind of what, not Oak State. There was somebody else that did that earlier. I think one of the games is like, hey, we're going to have to go for 2 anyway. We might as well just knock this out. So Harsin, I think the jury's still out on him. I mean, when y'all first hired him, I was like, I don't know, a Boise State guy. I mean, I don't know. I think if Auburn had waited 1 more year for this crazy year, y'all might could have leveled up. There's a lot of moving pieces this year. And I think last year was more of a, take what we can get. And I felt too many Auburn fans were trying to sell me on him than be excited about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in my mind, I thought it was a worser job by Harsin. The Tank thing, I wasn't as mad at him about, but what I was very mad about was not going for 2 right there in the first overtime because your defense is tired. At this point, your defense played great the entire game. End it now. You have a better chance at winning on this one play than you do letting Alabama, that's offense is starting to click right now. Defense is worn out. I don't think your chances are as good. And another thing I didn't like too is you got a field goal kicker that's injured. So we had a backup kicker in there. So obviously we wouldn't have the same Carlson level. And at the end of that game with 4th and 5, in my mind, why don't you go for it on 4th down right there instead of punting the ball inside the 5, because they're going to get back there in one play anyway because it's going to be a speed offense. So you know what? Why don't you try and get a 1st down right there and then the game's over? I mean, the lack of aggression and right there in my mind was absolutely terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I concur with what y'all said because when you look at how both games played out, the difference for me is this. Alabama had no business winning the Iron Bowl, like no business at all. Alabama was clearly the better team, though, against Georgia on Saturday. And when you look also at the fact that all season Georgia's success has been predicated on their defense, I can kind of understand why Kirby Smart would be a little bit more patient with Stetson Bennett and hope that the defense might turn the corner. But with Harsin, I mean, there were just too many blunders in that Iron Bowl down the stretch.
Agreed. All right, Hunter and Joe, I both want y'all to give me this. Auburn now is going into week 2 of their offensive coordinator search, which in my mind, I can't believe you would fire an offensive coordinator 2 weeks away from signing day and not have already had somebody that had agreed with for it before you fired him. Makes no sense to me. But Hunter, dream situation for an Auburn fan, who would be the best offensive coordinator they could get right now that's realistic?
Go for Dan Mullen. I mean, I even joked when he got let go. I mean, we were all ready to fire Bill O'Brien 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean, we were ready to get rid of Bob. And I still believe that he'll probably take a job. I mean, there was whispering about Virginia Tech, him and Marone going. And that's another thing. Doug Marone, is the offensive line coach, and he was a garbage, obviously, pro coach. That's why he got fired. But it looked like he took an Alabama who just won the what's the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line. And then we looked like Vanderbilt half the season. So, like, how do you regress that bad? But, I mean, I don't know if Dan Mullen's willing to go there. I mean, Dan Mullen would go to the Saban camp, be like, hey, look, I learned how to do press conferences for 2 weeks or 2 years under Saban. But, maybe go after a Mullen. But you got to do something quick because right now pieces are moving quick. You got Ole Miss's guys supposed to be going out to Oklahoma. Cristobal just jumped at Miami. He's going to be trying to pick somebody up. I mean, there's a lot moving. So, I don't really know the coordinators probably out there as well as others should, but my gut is, take a run at Dan. See if he's willing to, take a back seat for a couple of years and clear his name up.
What do you think, Joe?
Well, I saw where the Panthers fired Joe Brady this week. Is he still available?
He is still available. That's my number 1 pick right now. I mean, in my mind, you got a deal right now with Harsin compared to other coaches. I mean, shoot, now Lane Kiffin's making 7.5, and with incentives, it's more like $9 million a year. You're paying Harsin 5.5. Why don't you go out there and offer Joe Brady, who, of course, took Joe Burrow from nothing to winning the Heisman Trophy, arguably the greatest offense of all time, that in Alabama's last year. You can take arguments between it. I mean, why wouldn't you pay that guy like $3 million a year to be your offensive coordinator? Because right now you're still saving money versus everyone else. I mean, I just don't understand why you wouldn't even try on that one. I haven't heard his name really mentioned as a real possibility, but I'm with Joe. That's my number one guy.
He's going somewhere. I've also heard that Ole Miss is going to be really interested in him as well.
Well, I mean, he definitely, obviously he made a mistake by going to the pros when he should have stayed at LSU and should have stayed in the college ranks. He would have definitely gotten, I think, a head coaching job. And now he's gotten fired, and that's going to draw him back a little bit. But I still think the guy's an amazing offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to twist things back around, why didn't LSU go after him? Obviously, he was already on the rocks in Carolina a little bit. He, ran that season, kind of like pull out of Auburn's playbook. Go back and go get Gus Malzahn, who most people think won the 2010 national championship.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So why not go after why go after Brian Kelly? Brian Kelly's 60 years old. None of his assistants wanted to come with him. I don't know if you saw his atrocious Southern accent that he tried to pull off at the basketball. My family came here with me today.
I haven't won all my games yet.
Yeah, was it Foghorn Leghorns? We said. And then the funny thing is, he sounded more like Alabama redneck than he sounded like Louisiana Cajun. So he still got his accents off altogether. I think that's going to be a disaster, honestly. Like I just don't know how is Brian Kelly going to walk into Thibodaux, Louisiana, and convince some mama over a bowl of gumbo why he needs to come play, for this Yankee from Massachusetts.
Do you think after his first game he's going to be eating a corn dog?
It'd be great. I saw a Twitter comment that said Brian Kelly looks like the guy that thinks Sprite spicy. See, what's he going to think about Southern Cajun?
All right, Hunter. Well, before you go, why don't you tell us a little bit about Beach Ball Properties and what you got going on for the new year, the next summer season coming up?
Absolutely. So Beach Ball is still steady growing. Right now, we've got over 175 properties under management. We're looking for a goal by probably March to be at over 200. We recently brought in a huge 6-bedroom house directly on the beach. Got another large 8-bedroom house actually across the street from the beach with a pool and a tiki bar. Constantly upgrading the inventory. As far as a business, we're growing. Just made 2 new hires in the office. I'm going to add a 3rd maintenance guy after the start of the season. But right now I tell people this is the time to get in and make bookings, because everybody now is going to a dynamic pricing model, which is based on supply and demand. And if you wait longer and longer to make that booking, as supply drops and there's still demand for people coming in the summertime, those prices continue to rise. So I'm telling people, get in early. I like to tell you, New Year's Day is one of our biggest sales day. It's weird. I guess everybody's at home. They're thinking about planning for the year. We do huge things there, but we've got beach condos, we got duplexes, we got houses. We cover Fort Morgan, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach. Love to have anybody. Check out our website, beachballproperties.com. Very user friendly. Punch in the dates you're looking for. You can select by property, select by area. Of course, if you're old school, pick up the phone. We're 251-968-8896 is our website. Check us out on Facebook too. That's Ginger's always in there updating things, putting neat little things going on. And we also manage the What's Happening Orange Beach page. So we always tell people, check out our Facebook, because you'll definitely figure out what's happening around Orange Beach with us.
Well, what's happening here is we loved having Hunter on the show. As always, brings a lot of passion for Alabama, and as always, anyone can listen to our show on Spotify. Look up the Dan and Joe Sports Show on Spotify. Now we got our own YouTube channel. If you look up the Dan and Joe Sports Show on YouTube, it's all over there. And of course, you can listen to us to Google Play and Apple, and you can also follow us on Twitter at DJ Sports Show. And as always, I'm Dan,
and I'm Joe.